Skeptic Zone, a miracle of technology. A universe of reason, the Skeptic Zone.
Hello from Sydney, Australia. Richard Saunders here with you once again for the Skeptic Zone podcast, show number 12 for the 9th of January 2009. A special episode. We're going to be looking at UFOs. We'll kick off with an interview we conducted a few weeks ago with our good friend and UFO expert, Dr. Steve Roberts, and then we'll find out what some other people have to say about their encounters, or lack of, with UFOs. Is the truth out there? Probably, or probably not. I don't know, but I know the truth is in here, in my lounge room tonight, because I've got Steve Roberts from the Australian Skeptics, who is our UFO expert. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Richard. How are you going?
I'm really well. Thank you for dinner, by the way. That was great. Steve cooked us a lovely dinner.
I didn't cook it. You cooked it. I bought it.
Well, you helped cook it.
I tipped it into the pan. You turned the gas on under it.
Good enough
I suppose,
for me.
really, strictly speaking, you cooked it then. I just prepared it.
It was chicken, not goose.
I ate it. I ate it too.
Amanda Rose.
It was delicious.
And you did any. It's not fair.
Amanda Rose and Dr. Rachael Dunlop are joining us here in my lounge room, and virtually joining us via Skype from Perth is Kylie Sturgis.
Yes, I'm here in spirit, but obviously I missed out on the dinner element. But never mind. I'm feasting my eyes at the moment on the wonderful Steve Roberts, who I can see on my teeny tiny Skype screen. Well, I'm a couple of hours behind, so I guess I'll have to have some virtual dinner a little bit later, I guess.
Never mind. Now, we're very interested, Steve. We are very interested.
Interesting or interested?
Both. Tonight, in the topic of UFOs. Unidentified flying objects, but I must say more specifically, the claims of alien ships visiting Earth.
Well, that's a specific subset of the UFO culture. But the old 1950s belief is that the unknown things seen, or whatever they were actually alien ships visiting, but that becomes implausible for various reasons. So other people make other explanations for it, like they're maybe alien beings that live on the Earth, or they're sort of psychic emanations, or it's military testing secret stuff, which is only really comes since 1960.
That's all very well, but you know, when the general population, the general public hear the term UFO, in their heads they're thinking alien spacecraft from another planet.
Yeah, to most people the two things are synonymous.
Yeah.
So you have to think, well, there's a good Gary Larson cartoon on this topic about there's an alien called Tharg or something, and in front of a committee of aliens, and they're saying, so Professor Tharg, you're applying for a grant to go and fly to this Earth planet, land in the desert, walk up and down in front of some people, and then fly back again. So if the aliens come all the way here, which would be a very laborious journey, in fact, from anywhere else.
It is a long way to come, isn't it, Steve? Just to sort of maybe make some marks in some crops, or...
You'd make a bigger bang if you got here, I think, after doing it like that. You land on the White House lawn. As in the film The Day the Earth Stood Still, where the flying saucer actually does land on the White House lawn, and the alien gets out, and I showed that when I was at uni. We used to hire those films at £5 a time and charge people to go in and throw paper darts, and the Harry Lime character in that, who's actually an alien, stops a passerby and says, "Son, who's the most important man in this country?" And somebody in the audience yelled out, "Bob Dylan."
That actually sounds like a really good film night suggestion for a skeptics group, quite frankly.
It would be amazing, yeah. And you can
1950s alien films and sit around and have a lot of fun with them.
Oh, the double entendres are amazing. There's an episode where the woman, who's an Earth woman, gets stunned or knocked out, and the robot picks her up and carries her into the spacecraft, and the audience just went wild when he did that, imagining what was going to happen next, with a 7-foot robot. Gumph. We don't go there, do we?
Now, Kylie, I know that you've been doing a little bit of research for us tonight. Do you have any questions to put to Steve that might stump him?
Well, one of the questions that I have is really, how sceptical can one get? I mean, we've had Stephen Hawking saying that, yes, there's a possibility. We've already had SETI for quite some time saying absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. And yet we seem to have two extremes. We've got one side where people are saying, yes, there are aliens. In fact, I got impregnated by a blonde version of Marge Simpson and gave birth to a box of ducks.
You should be so lucky.
And on the other side, we have
Did you get a phone number?
No, let's cut funding to any sort of investigation of space whatsoever because it's pointless. Nothing's happened for decades. It's all loonies who say these sorts of things. So where's the middle ground? At what point do you say, OK, this is healthy scepticism and this is actually benefiting science?
OK, we've got to separate SETI from the rest of it. With SETI, it's actually a search for things that are out there and or should be out there and they're going to remain out there. We're just looking for radio signals or any kind of signals from some distant civilization. And if we got one, it would be fairly laborious to make a conversation out of it. But it would be important to detect that if it's detectable. It's worth a small amount of money to have a try. I don't want to sort of cancel it. I wouldn't want the program to be cancelled altogether, but I wouldn't want serious funding to go to it in so as to deplete welfare organisations or whatever. So it's a question of how much money should go into it, and the answer is not much, but something should go into it.
Well, certainly the suggestion which was put forward by a fellow, I think it was involved with the Anima Project. It was back in May in Denver, the Extra campaign, where a fellow called Peckman said that he wanted $75,000 annually from the city and county of Denver in order to check whether or not there was going to be extraterrestrial landings and what should they do in preparation.
I'd take that. I'd take that job.
Yeah,
for Sydney. Yeah.
75,000. Yeah, well, that's a different hypothesis and more of a preposterous one that this is unlikely to happen. And it hasn't happened so far. I mean, if you forget about SETI now and go to the traditional meaning of UFOs as alien craft, there has been no evidence so far. Now, something might come tomorrow, that will be wonderful, but so far, everything that has apparently been an alien spacecraft turns out to be a hoax or too fuzzy or not enough evidence. After 60 years of this, people are pretty tired of it, so... and actually it came to a head after 50 years, which is 10 years ago now, 11 years ago now, with the anniversary of the sighting at Roswell. What was that, 1998? So 97, 98, and the media were forced for the first time to report this event because it was actually a newsworthy event, and they decided to take a sort of cynical line to it that, you know, Roswell's having a big party in the town of Roswell, and this can't really be serious. You know, they can't really take the UFO phenomenon seriously, and that was the slant the media began to take on that, and it's remained that way ever since. But up until then, UFOs, through the 1990s, UFOs were taken sort of seriously by the media as a sort of hangover from the more credible, gullible times before that. But it's on the people who say there's something going on to produce some evidence, and really a film with some fuzzy lights is not good enough. You need a piece of metal from Alpha Centauri or something with a different isotope concentration you couldn't make on the Earth would be a good bit of evidence.
Well, what do you?
But they have all that, don't they? They say they have all that.
They say they have it, but when you ask for it, they say, "Oh, well, I lost it." I mean, how can you lose?
Or we're not giving it to you to test.
I see. They as in the believers, not the government.
You say,
have it anyway.
No, not the government. They're just not telling us.
Ufologists.
Yeah, the space aliens gave me an artifact. So you say, "Well, can we see it?" He said, "Oh, well, I lost it," or the space aliens took it away again, or some men in dark suits came and took it away.
Don't we have Australia's most, I don't want to get controversial, but Australia's foremost ufologist who says he has DNA and
he's not the foremost
hair
ufologist.
And so on?
I seem to recall doing an interview myself on that particular topic, and how even in an interview which I believe is available on YouTube, thanks to Richard putting up for me, even he was starting to hesitate about the legitimacy of the DNA that he had. I think people were probably more interested in the beautiful blonde woman who seemed to...
I've seen the picture. There's a picture of the woman that he has apparently had a
encounter with?
A close encounter with.
Of the
in front of it is the DNA with 150 or 160 genomes, which is not many.
If listeners would like a little bit of research on their own, they can Google the name Bill Chalker. Bill Chalker is a very nice man and one of Australia's stalwarts of the UFO industry, I think.
Yep.
And he has written a book called, I think from memory, Alien DNA or something like that.
Well, could be, yeah.
Yeah, it's worth Googling Bill Chalker. Very, very nice man. I don't think we see eye to eye on every detail.
So I'm not aware of Bill Chalker. I take it he's a believer. He's the one saying he's got the DNA.
No, I wouldn't say that.
But he's the one that publishes books. And
he is. But then again, he takes believe it or not, he takes a lot more sceptical view than most UFO stalwarts.
There are some researchers whose
nonetheless, he says he has alien DNA.
Well, there you go. Or strange DNA. Or something.
Strange DNA. There's only 120 genomes in it, so it's pretty... So obviously this blonde woman is very attractive and very, very, very stupid, if that's her DNA. It's only got 120 genomes.
Maybe she just has a head of blonde hair, is that it? Because it's not a lot of...
In fact, if you do a search online, you'll find that there's quite a bit about the blonde hair and where it managed to get all over the place.
Must have been quite an event.
I was just flipping through a couple of accounts of it then, and it seems rather saucy, which I guess is probably why it's stuck in our minds so much.
Yeah, well, so it would. There are some researchers whose work is respected, and Bill Chalk was one. Keith Basterfield of SA is another, and John Auchetel, spelled Auchettl. Of Victoria. These are serious researchers that believe in UFOs but are looking for scientific evidence, and they're looking in a sober and scientific fashion. And their analysis of sightings is usually highly credible.
And what do they look for, Steve? How do they...
Well, if they investigate a sighting, their work is reasonably good. And unfortunately, it usually comes to nothing. But
yeah, well, and what do you mean usually?
Yeah, they've written books on, listing what evidence there is, and there's nothing startling falls
But
out
again,
of
it depends what you mean by UFO. If you mean alien spacecraft, then of course every time it's drawing a blank.
Well, every sighting, every reported sighting, actually things creep. There's a sort of scope creep of this. There's a book by, I think it was by Keith Basterfield, I may be wrong, but he published a good book of Australian UFO sightings. And there was one in Bankstown, and inside the book it said there was a sighting at Bankstown in 2 o'clock in the morning.
Always at night, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And somebody saw a light, and the street lights the street lights went dim. Okay, and in the jacket of the book, on the inside flap of the jacket book cover, it said there was a sighting in Bankstown, and the street lights went out. And on the blurb on the back of the book, it says there was a sighting in Bankstown and the whole area went dead for 2 hours. Okay, now I had to try to chase this up. I tried to ring Bankstown Council, but it disappeared as such. It's a new area with a different name, and there's no records kept. If all the streetlights...
The area disappeared completely.
Politically,
what remains behind?
A big hole. Yeah, good thing too.
For listeners overseas...
We're not very far from Bankstown Council area.
Yeah, we better watch out there, Lincoln.
For listeners overseas... Or those who may not know, Bankstown is a suburb of Sydney, not too far from here, and it has its own little airport.
It does have
so if you see strange lights around an airport, well, Well,
there it is, yeah. But if all the streetlights go dead for 2 hours, do you think the council will have a record of it? Like, engineer was called out and was very grumpy.
You can use Google Earth to look at it, actually.
That's right.
Only if the lights are on. Anyway, there's a bit of scope creep even within the book. That the sightings get made bigger and bigger, even within the book you're reading, and it's a known phenomenon of UFO sightings that the story gets better and better. Actually, of stories of anything, the story gets embellished with time.
We call it the fish cycle.
It's the fishy cycle.
The fishy cycle, where things grow over time. I caught a fish that was this big, and then it was this big, and you retell it, and it's huge. I call that the fish cycle.
The fish cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Can I ask you a question, Steve?
Yes, you can. Indeed.
You've seen the most recent footage that we looked at the other night from Turkey. The UFOs apparently over Turkey. One of them looked suspiciously like the Romulan bird of prey from Star Trek.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were Star Trek. No, it was USS Enterprise 3701. They're flying over Turkey. No, they were plastic models.
One of the things that I discussed with Steve at the time was that this footage, and if you Google UFOs over Turkey on YouTube, you'll find it, or search for it on YouTube. The footage is date stamped, and so over a period of months this footage was taken. But what I thought was interesting about it was, despite the fact that they took it over several months, at no point across the sort of 6 month span did they think to get a tripod or perhaps a better video camera.
It's all shaky handheld camera.
So its handheld camera is very out of focus. It's, very, very shaky.
It's really annoying that when you get a good sighting that you haven't got a good camera with you. But
it's always the case, Steve.
It's actually one of the big arguments against UFOs being anything significant. That back in the 1950s, it was unusual to own a camera. And some people did. It'd be like owning your own aeroplane or owning a speedboat now. And some people did, and most people didn't. So photography was not understood and fairly rare. My dad bought a camera in the late 50s, and we were playing with it. It was all very exciting, you know. But now everyone's got a camera, everyone's got a mobile phone, all the kids have cameras, and there's more. Mr. Kodak must be very happy. There's more pictures or more photography than ever before.
But it's still the same
fewer
problem,
UFO
isn't it?
pictures.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about this a few weeks ago because we were talking about the cryptozoology, and I read a report from someone saying that he saw this species, and the last thing he thought of was to grab his camera. Now, surely
that's preposterous. The first thing you think of
you generally would have a camera in your hand.
Well,
anyway.
in fact, one of the early adverts for mobile phones about 10 years ago, it was from Telstra, and from a certain mobile phone company, and it showed a man watching a UFO, and the captain said, "Quick, tell somebody." And the point is, if you had a mobile phone with you, you better ring people up and say, "Here I am, I'm watching a UFO."
That's right.
You actually could phone up from the middle of nowhere.
They have an answer for that, isn't it? The UFO is sending off electronic
secret radiations,
blah 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 that
stopping the
affects
phone
the
from
thing.
working.
And we have actually been at a legitimate UFO research
talk
where
they use that excuse.
That's what they said. So
when the UFOs come, all their electronic equipment suddenly failed, so they couldn't take the photograph.
That is their absolutely serious explanation for why they only have blurry pictures.
If they bought a skeptic alarm, that wouldn't happen, would it?
But Amanda, we could block it.
Oh, do we ruin everything? Do we?
Yeah,
Just
we do. In fact, I'm prepared to attend events for a small fee and to be present as a skeptic, so that things don't go wrong like this.
I'm prepared to attend events for a large fee, in fact.
I'm prepared to do that.
Oh, you
too.
do anything for that.
But Amanda, I remember
anywhere where they give me
I'll come for a couple of beer tokens. Amanda, I remember you telling me at that same talk that they said that they'd climbed up some large hill to wait for these UFOs to appear, and as midnight struck, they suddenly felt overcome with tiredness. Is that correct?
It was the Blue Mountains. They were walking up. They were hiking all day. The Blue Mountains, west of Sydney, and at midnight they were setting up their camp, and suddenly they felt tired, which they took to be evidence that the UFOs were near sending off, the signals that were making the human muscle and whatever being tired. You've hiked through the mountains all day and it's midnight.
A sense of disappointment.
And of course,
you're tired.
And the UFOs must have come down when they're all asleep, you see.
And stopped their electronic equipment working.
But I always mention that because it's just like the absolute epoch of chutzpah, isn't it, to say that I am tired at midnight, therefore UFO.
Well, it's the same as your haunted stairs.
Yes,
you walk to the top of the stairs, your legs get heavy. Therefore, haunted stairs.
I just wish I knew about this excuse many years ago when I was forced to do physical education. I could have said, I'm sorry, I just can't take part in the sports carnival. The UFOs are stopping me.
UFOs are stopping, yeah.
Now, Steve,
good alien.
I wonder if you could tell our listeners about the incident not too many years ago that was reported in the Skeptic magazine of the actual photograph of the UFO in Victoria near the train crossing.
Oh, heaven help us, yeah. It was January 2003, and I actually have the original photograph, because it's a wonderful thing in this modern age. The photograph is a JPEG in a camera, and I have the original JPEG file, or a copy of the original.
Copy of it, yeah.
But it is as good as the original.
Yeah,
it's a digital copy,
it's the
bit for bit, the same as the original.
Yeah.
So I have the seminal photograph. And it was an engineer, a borough engineer, who sent to photograph railway crossing lights to show that they were working. So he went there and waited for a train, and the train approaches and the red lights flash and the bell goes ding, 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 and the barrier comes down and it all works properly. And he took a movie of actually various still photographs of this.
Yes.
And the train went past, he took pictures of that, and then the barriers come up again, he took pictures of that, and then the council records all that so they can say, on January the 16th, 2004, whatever it was, all this was working. And he took 3 pictures in quick succession just before the train came, and in the middle picture there's a UFO. Not in the other 2, but in the middle picture there's a little black and white object.
Little blurry object,
flying
and it
across.
looks like it has a dome on the top. It's very good.
Yes, white on the top and black on the bottom.
Yeah.
There it is. There's a UFO buzzing across, waiting for the
where
train
was this?
as well.
Do you remember looking?
Yes, it was Beveridge, Victoria.
Beveridge.
Yeah, spelt as in Beveridge, and it's got historical connotations with Ned Kelly.
If listeners would type that and into Google and UFO, you'll find
Beveridge UFO. You probably get the original file as well, or email the show and we'll send it to you. And you can have a look yourself. And somebody went there and got interviewed. Somebody was there on television being interviewed a day later, and there he was, and there the interviewer was, and they spent all their time making the Australian salute, batting flies out of the way. It was a hot day, and good day, I'm pleased to meet you, bat, you know. And there it is, and lo and behold, this thing is a fly.
It's a fly.
Yeah, which explains why you can't see it when you take the pictures. You take the picture, and it's a fly. It's only like 6 inches from the camera lens. It's flying right across your face, so you wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
Your face would be behind the camera, and then it'd be gone. And you wouldn't, if you did see it, you wouldn't think it was remarkable. But and there's similar pictures of birds and so on, which are actually quite close to the camera, which also explains why they're fuzzy and out of focus.
Yes.
This is another thing, that everything in the picture's in focus, the train, the railway track, the level crossing signs, the scenery, the background, the road in front and the background behind are all in focus. The UFO's not.
Ah, yes, but the UFO's not in focus.
Because it's moving
It's
really
moving so
fast.
Well,
fast.
sending special UFO unfocusing beams. Yes, well, people have said this. And,
UFO unfocusing beams.
What?
well, the UFO sends a special unfocusing beam so you can't photograph it.
Like a tractor beam in
Well, then you
Trek.
feel, that would be wonderful.
The same as the legs getting tired beam, I suppose, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. God, the effect you could have with that, you could hang Saddam Hussein with it or something. You could just
So, what would you
song.
finally say constitutes actual proof? What would really make it
something physical that you could hold in your hand. I mean, we're physical beings, and a photograph could be, especially a digital photograph, can be cooked up, and many have. And the
I've
film,
done it myself.
with
With
the film
my
Forrest
students.
Gump is a good
We ended up
example.
getting a
And
school hat and flinging it up in the air and taking photos, and we managed to mimic quite a good example of a UFO on the school playground by just simply using a school hat. So it has to be physical evidence, something.
yeah, photo won't do. It's got to be. Or actually, what we'll do is several photos by different people from different angles, so you
the
can
same
triangulate where it was, and that has never happened. So when a UFO flies over Perth, which is 2 million people. If there's one picture, that's very nice. But if there was something there really should be more than one picture. If it took a long time to fly over, there should be several shots at it, and you can see with the height and the distance and so on. There's
Certainly
never
satellite evidence, or maybe even something showing up on Air Force radar, even.
Yeah, see, if you try and ask questions about that, the Air Force will say, yeah, it's all classified, and then you say,
Really?
they're keeping it secret. Well, actually, there's good military reasons for keeping some stuff secret. And actually, maybe things don't. They send special anti-radar beams as well. So I've had it seriously
the
proposed.
UFOs do.
I've had it seriously proposed that UFOs can flash on and off in the visual spectrum and on and off in the radar spectrum at the same time or different times, just to say, hey, here we're here. No, we're not here. No, we're here.
We're going to confuse the humans tonight.
I had a perfect report of a
They speak
UFO.
English?
Which was clearly Venus. It was in the position, but he looked like Venus and was in the position where Venus was. And this guy was sure as a UFO. He's a UFO fan, to put it mildly. And I said, it's Venus. And he said, oh, well, okay. This is a hard one, Supposing the UFO was right in front of Venus. Yeah, you got me there, boy. You got me there. So that's fine if observed from Bankstown, but when you go across the city to Bondi Beach, then you can't have it in front of Venus in both places. In fact, if it's in the Earth's atmosphere, it's only about 5 miles up. So if you move 5 miles sideways, it'll be completely out of range. So it means every time somebody looks up, they have to move the UFO frantically to get it in front of Venus.
Well, you would have heard the story, Steve, recently in the last few months where there were a lot of reports to the local police in the UK. I can't remember exactly where it was.
Wales.
Was it in Wales?
Wales, yeah.
They reported a low-hanging bright object in the sky. Do you recall this story?
No, I've seen that somewhere. It's a Welsh UFO, and the Welsh are very proud they've got their own UFO at last, because Wales isn't really on the map until you've got a UFO that's a Welsh UFO.
Well, if this is the Welsh UFO I think you're referring to, it turned out the police went to investigate and it was the moon.
Oh, no.
But it's a Welsh moon. Look, you.
But I recall reading this
It's
story.
a UFFFYLLO.
I recall reading this story in the paper, and it was transcribed by the reporter as the officer who was sent out to investigate calling back to base and saying, it's the moon, over.
I have a question as well.
No, go. Let's go.
Yeah, this will probably get edited out. It's a bit of a question without notes.
Only if you say to go.
But when I trace my sceptical sort of journey back to when I was a child and lapping up stories about UFOs and the Loch Ness Monster
Yeah,
and
me too.
crystal skulls and exactly and I wasn't sceptical at all then, but nonetheless it's the beginning of my interest in it.
Yeah, me too.
And the thing about, and I just remember getting every single book out of the local library on UFOs, and the thing that creeped me out the most was the stories of the Men in Black. And I know that the idea's been taken over by the series of movies and so on.
You would have read the book by Albert K. Bender.
Oh, I don't think I read the Usborne Book of Mysteries. That's the book that I was reading. But the Men in Black, so we're talking, 25 years ago or whatever when I was a child reading it, who would go visit people who had seen UFOs to tell them not to tell anybody. Mm-hmm. And they would go to the house dressed in black suit with a black tie. And now, at the time I didn't know, but now I can realise that's meaning like a federal agent or a federal government stereotypical sort of suit.
With a po-faced expression.
That's right. And then afterwards, the people who they had visited would realise that they didn't have eyebrows and they didn't have fingernails. Yes, right. And they didn't have hair because they had the hats on,
that's why they wear the
G-Man hats, but they didn't have hair, and they were sort of slightly unworldly, and they would realise later that they were, aliens, although they'd appear human at the beginning.
Right, so Men in Black were the aliens.
Yes.
Men in Black were the aliens, yeah.
Because afterwards they'd realise they didn't have fingernails and they didn't have eyebrows and hair, and
they're trying to hide
they appeared to be human.
Trying to collect all the evidence and destroy it of aliens being present.
That's right. And the thing that creeped me out about UFOs was the Men in Black. Like the UFOs, fine, you see a UFO, but then the Men in Black was the scariest thing. And maybe it's an anthropological question. It's probably associated with the Cold War and the federal agents and the CIA and all of that kind of business entering the public consciousness. But I wonder if that's a tradition in the UFO movement that's come out,
it is.
Lasted beyond the 50s.
It is. It was actually true to start with, because the original sighting, the original sighting in 1948, Roswell, that was a crash one. The one before that, there was some wreckage recovered. Some bits of a balloon were recovered, sticky tape and
weather
rods. No, actually a very secret high altitude balloon for spying on the Russians
yes.
Which actually was really secret at the time. It was real. And it was a very delicate espionage program, which the Americans didn't want publicised. And hey, now they'll shoot us all. And this damn thing crashed, and there actually was wreckage. And some people did come and take it away. There were army people did come and take it away. And they told the farmer, don't talk about this to anybody. And this being 1948, the atmosphere then, the farmer fell for this, and respected this and said, yeah, that's good enough. The men told me not to talk about it, and I'm not going to.
Isn't that similar to what happened at Roswell, Steve? That there were because that turned out to be an espionage balloon.
That gets extended to other sightings now, which get dignified with these people saying, don't talk about it. And the thing is, if you were told now, in 2008, if somebody says the government doesn't want you to talk about this, it would be all over the web within minutes.
Yeah.
But now, even back in those days, you wouldn't talk about it. You'd respect this authoritarian figure. And there might have been some civilian agents going around doing this, but there were certainly army people going around saying we want all the evidence gathered and taken back, and we don't want people to talk about this because it is in fact a secret program of real military significance in the middle of the Cold War, and times are a bit dodgy.
But what do you make of the sort of hijacking of the Roswell incident, I suppose, which made it sort of part
it's really weird. There was talk in the UFO community. I've been active since 1967 in the UFO community, since I was a kid. And this wasn't mentioned. It was known to be there, but it was just one of many obscure sightings that nobody cared about. People were more worried about current sightings and recent sightings, and it wasn't until 1980 that attention was drawn to it by Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist, who, by the way, is less of a nuclear physicist than I am, and you, for that matter. So we are, the Dr. Rachael, nuclear physicist. And he drew attention to it, and it began to gain prominence in the UFO culture until it got bigger and bigger. And it was of interest because it's the only claim that there's a real manifestation of a crashed UFO. I mean, the claim is that this thing, some large craft has crashed and is being kept in a hangar at Area 51 a large piece of evidence along some alien bodies, or a lot of physical stuff is being kept secret.
But it's true, isn't it, that it was 20 years after the crash occurred that it took off in the media again.
32 years, yeah. 32 years that one man drew attention to it, and he's unfortunately highly prominent and gets all over the place, so there's him alone pushing it.
In fact, Brian Dunning does a very good skeptoid on the Roswell incident, but it's funny when you listen to what he talks about and read about it, that in fact, yes, it took 30 years for it to sort of get publicised to the level that it has now, and it's entered, the public sphere as this amazing incident, which in fact it wasn't at all. It was
at the time, there was only one farm and some weather balloon pieces.
Yeah, that's right. And now it's part of folklore and it's part of legend, and in fact it's all been pretty much fabricated.
I give a lecture. I show a terrific picture of this large crashed flying saucer about 100 feet across, embedded in the mountainside, sticking out at an angle. And presumably the captain's saying, I do wish you'd drive more carefully. Dear, oh dear.
But there were supposed to be charred bodies as well, weren't there?
Yeah, there was. The alien autopsy of 1995 was a famous incident of this, and people fell for that.
I've got the video upstairs.
It's wonderful.
It's hilarious.
You only see two walls of the room, and it's great fun. And for a long time, some people thought it was genuine. The UFO groups all polarised into believers and sceptics of that movie, and eventually they all moved to the sceptical side, and somebody fessed up to it. But then, of course, you'd say, well, where is the real evidence? There must be the real movie somewhere. If this one's a forgery, there must be a real one.
Yeah, that's always the way, isn't it?
Sorry, Kylie, you have a question?
Yeah, so at what point did you move to the sceptical side? You said you've been believing in this since you were a child, not that dissimilar to Amanda's account of how
I'll fess up. I ran a UFO group. I was chairman of the Imperial College UFO Research Group. Sorry. Yeah, I was, and there were lots of us, and we thought there was something in it. We were kids, and actually we were university students, and we thought, well, this bears looking at, and unfortunately that's exactly what we did. We gathered the evidence, and we shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have got hold of the evidence. We got hold of all the British sightings for 6 years, every one of them, and well, for starters, only about 100 of them, and then 90 of those are crap. You think, well, okay, where's the rest of it? Well, there is no rest of it. This is it, mate. This is all the evidence. All the sightings recorded.
They've released more since then, haven't they? And even then, there's been questions about the legitimacy of it. Rachael was exclaiming about how they were meant to be, I don't know, about 5 times the speed of sound or something like that.
10 times the speed of sound.
And
there'll be a sonic boom then. There'll be a mighty bang one under the path of everywhere they went, and people would hear that and say, what's that mighty bang I've just heard?
That's a very good point. I make this point to people. There are various physical things we must look out for if they're travelling at that speed and they're slowing down and starting up. You would hear the bloody sonic boom.
Maybe they part the air and just pass through it, but in that case you wouldn't see them either. If they're going to be visible, they're going to be physical.
What am I thinking about? The aliens obviously have the technology.
They have technology way beyond what we have on Earth.
Yeah, they forgot to turn off the cloaking shield.
What was I thinking?
It reminds me of where cryptozoology was the wing nuttier end of cryptozoology, which is they've moved on to not just Bigfoot is some kind of thing that lives in the mountains that nobody knows about, but that Bigfoot phases in and out of quantum time.
Oh, God.
And that's why you can't find it. If you go to the really hardcore, that cryptozoology, that's what they say in order to get around the fact that there's zero evidence.
The UFO field's related to that, and we actually had Tim Dinsdale, who filmed the Loch Ness Monster, give us a talk at the UFO group, and he showed his camera and showed the film he made, which was a wind-up camera, but it was on a tripod.
Wind-up camera?
And there is something in the water. It's probably an otter, but hey, it could be a monster,
Could be a wind-up.
If there's a monster in Loch Ness, there can't just be one. There's got to be a whole family of them.
Yeah, it's the same.
They've got to breed.
Same as the panther.
The panther, same as the panther. It's got to be.
So you can't just have one.
I'll tell you something interesting. My mum's in Los Angeles, or America at the moment, and she was in California and went to Monterey Bay and Morrow Cove or whatever it's called, where there are lots of wild otters. And she took photos with a pretty, quite an ordinary digital camera that doesn't have much of a zoom, and she took photos of all these otters, and they're up on Flickr, and I was looking at them and thinking, well, that looks like a Nessie.
Really?
You know,
Really?
like these pictures of and I know there are otters,
They can make
but
a
there's
wake
just
and
a
get
pretty.
little humps behind. They
That's
can poke
right.
up out of the
They
water.
lie on their backs and
That's
they get
right.
the stones together.
That's right. They lie on their backs on their sides.
Yeah,
They're
yeah, they're
moving. They're
great,
not
yeah.
moving. Like it's a whole.
We should do a
thing.
program about. I can do one about the Loch Ness monster and a lot of gossip about that.
Hey, if anybody out there
that'd
wants
be
to
good.
fly the entire cast of the Skeptic Zone to Loch Ness, we will do a broadcast from the shores of Loch Ness.
Yeah.
I promise you, we will, and we will mention you by name.
And we will take a tripod this time.
My family clan is the oldest clan that still inhabits its family castle.
What?
So, if that doesn't buy me a little bit of
What, in Scotland?
Scottish largesse, I don't know what does. The
okay.
roses.
Yeah, well, I'll ask. I'll mention the name and if we go there.
If you look on a clan map, we're in between the Macbeths and the Macduffs. In
That's
the middle
where you
is
are.
the roses.
God, you're in real strife, you know.
I
Every
don't
time they have
believe.
a battle,
Boasting
isn't it?
about in regards to being between the Macbeths and the Macduffs, it means you're next in
I
line.
don't believe in any conspiracy theories except the one that says that Shakespeare wrote us out of history.
No.
Yeah.
We're not in that stupid play at all.
Is that just down the road from McDonald's?
So what I'm saying is, take me home, Scottish roads.
Maybe you can get a hitch a ride on a UFO and all.
Yeah, you can do that.
Getting back to UFOs.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you what happened. We got all the flaming evidence, and there wasn't much. And we thought, well, what's all the fuss about? And we attended other meetings, other UFO groups, and we realised pretty soon that they're all totally insane. You know, some really balmy people in it, and we all became very sceptical. This is actually where I became sceptical. You know, every time somebody said I've got a flying saucer in my garden.
And how often did that occur, Steve?
Quite a lot.
Oh my God.
And we said, well, can we see it? And he said, maybe, you know. And yeah, we all became fairly sceptical people, and we began to view reports of UFOs as something to be analysed, you know, with vigour. I wouldn't say with a cynical light, but you know, it's unlikely this is the real thing every time. And there were a couple of sightings. We had to learn all the famous sightings, and there were a couple of sightings that were unexplained. Mm-hmm. One was by a 14-year-old boy called Darby. The surname was Darby. And it was a UFO above a hedge, and it was unexplained. And nobody said, this is the real thing.
Wait a minute, was it just a report or a photograph?
Stephen Derbyshire, it was a photograph.
Oh.
It was a hedge, you could see it, there was a UFO above it. His name was Stephen Derbyshire, was 14. There was a story with it. And this was in the UFO annals for years and years and years. When Stephen Derbyshire was about 40, he fessed up to it. It was a model. He was a model. He faked it. He finally couldn't live with it anymore. You know,
I have a very good friend who created a bit of a stir on the northern beaches of Sydney here in...
Oh, we know about that. So. Oh, with the UFO.
with a UFO.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he created a UFO that made it into the local paper. He got a lantern, like a Chinese lantern, and stuck a candle in it, and I don't know, somehow got it to float up across the northern beaches, and it made it into the Manly Daily. And he never fessed up until now. I won't mention his name.
What do you mean?
Well, it's a bit
You're
of news.
fessing up on
I'm
his...
fessing up on his behalf.
Oh, okay.
no.
Yeah, but not much happens in Manly, so they can't put much of the Manly Daily. You know, dog bites man sort of thing. But
Dog bites
There's
Manly.
lots of
Yeah.
drunks in Manly. As long as he did it on a weekend night, lots of audience for it.
Enough people that it made it into the Manly Daily.
Have you... Kylie, do you have any more... questions for Steve before we all fall off the
Fly
table
away.
and fly away.
Well, you started all of this up with hope and disappointment in regards to UFOs. Do you think there's still hope, or is it more disappointment that we've got to look forward to, despite the fact that modern-day UFOologists seem to be reaching more for the quantum physics explanation for the reason why we just don't seem to have enough evidence?
that came in at about 1970. The UFOs have evolved as human vision has evolved over time. Like the 1950s UFOs are made of aluminium sheets riveted together. And the 1960s UFOs were plastic in globby forms. The 1970s UFOs were high-technology, vicious, spiky things. The 1980s ones were entirely invisible. They said, well, they're invisible UFOs. And gone to
How
psychic
convenient.
world. And as it's roughly where science fiction is, about a few years behind, maybe.
So that's why people are now reaching for what the bleep and quantum physics and all that.
That's right, yeah, people are trying to say, and then, of course you can't track that down, so it's become just completely ludicrous. But, I mean, there'd be people seeing things forever and seeing what they wish. And also the space aliens have... This is a bit nasty, actually. The space aliens evolve as well. The 1950s aliens were tall, elegant beings with long blonde hair and silver tracksuits who preach messages like stop testing atom bombs, have peace, don't fight the Russians.
My name is Barbarella, please.
That's right. That comes in a minute. And the 1970s aliens were small beings of a sort of semi-nasty appearance who said, stop polluting the planet, which was trendy in 1970, and don't wear those flared trousers and play the ABBA records.
Disco sucks.
Disco, yeah, sorry. The 1980s aliens, small, malevolent-looking beings who say, let's do some sexual experiments on you. So it's gone. As human aspirations get nastier and nastier. Yeah, and there'll be people seeing these things all the time, and we just have to allow for this, or people seeing what they can't explain, and the fact that they can't explain it doesn't mean it can't be explained.
Yeah.
It's impossible to reason with a person who's seen a UFO, because you say, look, chum, I was there, I saw it, you weren't there, you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. We get that from all the spectrum of skeptical inquiry.
Yeah.
People
But
say...
it doesn't necessarily mean that they're crazy or deluded, nor that they
No, I've seen some
sort of thing.
I would probably take a step back from that, Kylie. I would say, yes, they're probably deluded. Now, deluded has very negative connotations. Just means you're mistaken. You sincerely think something that's not true.
They're sincere but mistaken.
They're sincere but mistaken, yeah.
Or actually, maybe not even mistaken, they just can't understand what it is they've seen.
One of the key things is that it's really difficult to know distance and height and speed.
That's why it would be good if there are two sightings of the same flaming UFO.
And I think that I'm not a technical-minded, science-minded, really person at all, but I do get the train home from work every day.
Well, you must be highly sceptical.
Don't laugh at me, Richard. This is going somewhere, which is that...
So is the train.
It's going to Dunlop too.
Where Marrickville, thanks, the People's Republic of Marrickville, where we live, where we are right now, is close to the airport, and we see planes all of the time.
Yes.
And I remember this happens all the time. I'm getting a train home, and I'm looking out the window, and I see a plane taking off.
Yeah.
The train is moving. The plane is moving. To me, it looks like the plane is not moving at all.
I've experienced that myself.
And I don't know the physics and the maths, and if someone, I'm sure with our vast audience, someone will email in with the geek details. But to me, I don't know the geek details, except I'm looking at it and I know that there are geek details.
I'll have a shot now. There's nothing to compare the plane to. It's moving
exactly
in sky.
Right. I can understand the
If it was moving
general...
past a tree, you could relate it to the tree and you know it was moving, but it's in the sky and you
I
can't.
know. I'm looking at that plane outside my train window, and I know that plane is moving, like, vastly faster than I am moving, and it's taking off, right?
Yes.
But to me it looks like it is not moving at all.
Well,
and every time and it's a small thing, but to me, I think that feeds into my philosophy, which is anyone can be fooled. Mm-hmm. I can be fooled.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
What you see is not necessarily what is happening, and you need to correct all of that with objective
But you have to
standards.
learn something.
That's
which
exactly
is,
right, and you have to learn it, because if I had not learnt that, I would look and if it was a different circumstance, I would see that plane not moving, and I would think something completely different was happening than what it was.
What skeptics have done largely is that they've, to an extent, unlearned certain things, and they go against what is intuitive. And you really have to do that.
Because I'm looking at it, it is not moving from my point of view. It is not. It's like
if you look long enough, it would have to. If you look long enough, it would have to move.
Well, but let's say 10, 15 seconds while you're looking at it is not moving.
Yeah, I can see that. I've seen one coming towards me, which was actually flying, but it's actually not moving much relative to my line of vision.
Exactly.
Or maybe yours, if it's taken off towards you, it doesn't have to move
Whatever
much.
angles, and I know that it's angles and physics and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't know that...
Yeah, you'd say it can't be a plane because it wasn't moving.
Yeah, that's why...
And I saw it. Don't try to tell me anything different. Because
she saw it.
She was there.
I was there and I saw it.
I think one of the great lessons that skepticism teaches us is that no matter what we think or what we think we've seen or felt or heard, we must, even if it's completely counterintuitive and makes no sense to us at the time, say the words to ourselves, we might be mistaken. And that is something you have to learn.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. It's almost a daily reminder in a very mundane way. I look out the window, I see that plane, and think, I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing.
Maybe.
Well, I know that with that plane
case,
I'm not seeing. With that Qantas plane taking off, I know I'm not seeing.
Now, listeners are invited, indeed, to send us pictures of their UFOs. In fact, please do. Why not? Throw your frisbees in the air and your hat and your shoe and send it to us. We'd love to see them.
Sure.
I'll tell you something about UFO sighting experiences, or whatever the word is. You can't say contactees, but if somebody's seen a UFO, that makes him feel very special. And I've experienced this. I've seen something in the sky that I couldn't understand, and I thought, hey, the aliens are coming, and I'm the first one to see them, and this is really significant, and you get this wonderful feeling that you're somehow special. And if you keep that as a UFO, in my case, I unfortunately didn't. I kept watching it, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have gone indoors, and the darn thing turned into an aeroplane and flew overhead. But if I'd gone indoors before it did that, I think I've seen a UFO, and I feel very special. And I really don't wish to analyse people's UFO sightings that much, because you're taking that away from them. And the last thing they want is to have their UFO explained. And the analogy for this is in Monty Python's Life of Brian about the ex-leper. This guy's big and said, I'm an ex-leper, I had a living, but he killed me, and I'm not a leper anymore, And so if you're somebody who's seen a UFO, you can feel special, and really the last thing you want is for some skeptic to come along and explain it. So they're really... I'm reluctant to analyse the sightings for this reason. You're taking away people's self-esteem.
We would love to analyse your sightings, listeners, and if you'd like to send us your UFO photograph, please do. You can go to skepticzone.tv, click on the Contacts About Us link, and you can send us your photographs. But I would sincerely like to thank Dr. Steve Roberts for spending dinner with us, having dinner with us.
It was very good too. I poured it you poured it into the tin, and you heated it.
I did.
Thank you, Richard, for cooking our dinner.
My pleasure.
Thank you for lighting the stove, Richard.
I do. Thank you, Kylie, for joining us all the way from Perth via Skype.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you, Amanda Rose, and thank you, Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Thank you.
I don't know what else you could do in Perth.
Look for UFOs.
Cut that one out.
Here we'd be able to show you, wouldn't
Yes, if I was only there, if I could see the rest of the room.
Hi, I'm Alistair Tate, host of the new bi-weekly podcast, The Pseudoscientists, the official podcast of the Young Australian Skeptics. Join Elliot Birch, Darley Breedis, Jason Ball, Jack Scanlon, Tay Rush, and myself to hear what our generation have to say about quackery, science, and the issues that concern us. Subscribe to our podcast, located at youngozskeptics.com.
Hi, this is Tiffany Day, and I just wanted to let you know that this year, 2009, is the International Year of Astronomy, to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Galileo's use of the telescope to study the skies. The Year of Astronomy is an international celebration being hosted by the International Astronomical Union, as well as the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation. Everyone should realise the impact of astronomy and other fundamental sciences on our daily lives, and understand how scientific knowledge can contribute to a more equitable and peaceful society. If you'd like more information, you can visit astronomy2009.org, but there are well over 100 different countries participating in the celebrations this year, so if you'd like more information on events being held in Australia, you can visit astronomy2009.org.au. There is also a podcast that has been put together called 365 Days of Astronomy, which will publish one podcast per day for 5 to 10 minutes in duration for every single day of 2009. You can find this at 365daysofastronomy.org. Another one is Cosmic Diary, which you can find at cosmicdiary.org. It is a blog being put together by a group of astronomers. They are professional scientists and will blog in text and images about their lives, families, friends, hobbies and interests, as well as their work, their latest research findings and the challenges that face them. All these things are incredibly exciting and will help us all celebrate this year, 2009, as the International Year of Astronomy.
Hi, I'm Theo Clark, host and producer of the podcast Hunting Humbug 101. Each week I'm joined by my father, Jeff Clark, and we discuss a particular logical fallacy, with real-life examples of fallacies from pseudoscience, science misconceptions, politics, philosophy and the media.
Hunting Humbug 101 is a companion podcast to our book, Humbug, the Skeptic's Field Guide to Spotting Fallacies in Thinking. You can download them and subscribe to our podcast, obtain a free copy of the ebook version of our book, Humbug, and see many more real examples of fallacious reasoning at our website, www.skepticsfieldguide.net.
Now, let's all get back to enjoying the zone.
And now we have a couple of short interviews about UFOs, kicking off with one conducted by Dr. Karen Stolzno. Now, we did have some technical problems with the recording, but bear with it, it's only short. And after that, we'll have a quick chat to current New South Wales President of Australian Skeptics, Peter Bowditch, about his thoughts on UFOs.
I travelled to Vallejo in the San Francisco Bay Area to interview my friend, Bill Banks. Bill grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and when he was just a boy, he witnessed an unidentified flying object in the skies at school one day. I asked Bill to describe himself, and he said, "Present me as a postal worker and eccentric." Bill is also a member of Mensa and a reader of the Skeptic magazine, but my favourite introduction for him is the skeptic who saw a UFO.
So, thank you very much for joining me today, Bill. And I guess the first question I have to ask is, what was the experience that you had?
When I was in grade school, I can remember, say, 3 occasions at recess. I looked up into the sky. It was always clear and blue, and there were silver rockets leaving white contrails. Usually, say, I would guess 3 or 4 times the length of the ship. Now, the problem is, from your point of view, and anybody who believes in the real world, so to speak, and I include myself, is this is recess. This is grade school. And I never hollered, "Hey, look at that." I can still see these wretched things in my mind's eye more than 50 years later. But when I had a chance to holler, to get other folks go look, I didn't.
So there were other people around?
Yes, this is recess on definition.
So teachers and other students?
Students. Teachers stayed away from the playgrounds for whatever reason in those days.
So you don't have anyone who can really corroborate your story? So did you go home and tell your parents about it, or ever discuss it with anyone afterwards?
I can remember telling my folks, but they didn't take me too seriously. Surprise.
Even then, in those days?
No.
After all this time, would you say that you're skeptical of what you saw?
Absolutely. It's just...
Because I could say that you've spent, from that time until now, investigating this and thinking about this and reliving this experience, and it's interested you to this day.
Reliving and investigating is a little strong. It's interesting, absolutely.
But you think it's more probable that it's something natural rather than being an alien spacecraft? Because there are a lot of people, I would think that most people who believe in this sort of thing or who have had experiences would ascribe some sort of paranormal alien underlying reason to what they've seen.
Well, if you take literally the number of UFO reports, Lord knows that there's plenty of room for space monsters amongst them. The thing is that if you allowing that to be so, there is no apparent way to differentiate between the real spacelings and whatever else. That doesn't sit too well with me. I would think that real spacelings ought to clearly differentiate themselves from the gross, and the sightings are of such frequency as to logically preclude that degree of visitation.
So it's an unidentified flying object, and I guess if we go with that literal interpretation, then all the other experiences that other people have had, they're still left unidentified, and we need to continue being skeptical about them.
Well, I would urge skepticism about UFOs and a whole lot more, including most politicians.
And on that note, thank you very much for your time, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, I'm with Dr. Rachael Dunlop now, and this is your lab, isn't it, Rachael?
Well, it's our seminar room.
It's the tea room, yes.
The tea room, yes.
Now,
and we are having tea.
We're having tea. Now, it's interesting that when I was putting this episode together, I was trying to get people who have had UFO experiences, and I put out the call on the internet, and Rachel's been looking around, and Kylie and other people. We can't find anyone.
Isn't that funny, Richard? You tweeted it, I think.
Yeah.
Kylie tweeted it. You Facebooked it.
Yeah.
I asked around my workplace, and there's about 70 people who work here, and nobody had seen one.
Nobody sees UFOs anymore. What's happened? What's happened?
I don't know. I guess it's not the 1970s anymore, is it? When they were really popular and everyone was seeing them.
What a pity. I like the 1970s. They were good fun.
Or perhaps we're just not in a high UFO visitation area. You know, they tend to sort of congregate in the in rural England a lot, don't they?
Or, I tell you what, they've been seen in the Blue Mountains, which are west of Sydney. In fact, I think I'll go there now and see what I can find out.
Hurry, hurry.
UFOs like places like the Blue Mountains because they're closer, because of the height. They can save fuel by landing here rather than landing further down towards the ocean.
I'm speaking with Peter Bowditch, who's the current president of Australian Skeptics. We're in a lovely club here in the Blue Mountains, which are just west of Sydney, and it's beautiful up here. I really enjoy it, but it is a hot spot for UFOs.
Well, again, the other thing the UFOs are, they're concerned about global warming, obviously, and therefore the higher you are, the better. You know, if the Greenland ice caps melt between now and Tuesday, there's going to be flooding everywhere. It's going to be bad news.
Yeah.
Here it's going to be safe. We'll be able to stand on the bridge at the railway station and look at the ocean. Actually, I was suggesting to the council that they might introduce water skiing on our local lake, but I've got the feeling it would go down very badly.
So, I see, but what will this mean for the UFOs, honestly?
The UFO, well, one of the other attractions for the UFOs here is the aliens, is of course the Yowies. This is Yowie country. So I've had to become a true believer in Yowies because I've been through the bush, I've seen the bite marks on the trees, I've just seen the evidence that they're there.
It's everywhere. Now, for those people who may not realise, a Yowie is the Australian cousin of the Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Their feet aren't as big.
Their feet aren't as big?
No, but they have bigger teeth.
Bigger teeth?
Yes.
Maybe they should have big tooth.
We thought of calling them that, but I think that's a trade name for somebody. Also, we know in films of the Yowie, unlike films of Bigfoot, you can't see the zipper on the suit. Unlike that famous Patterson film of the Bigfoot, where when you go frame by frame you can see the zipper on it. I think it just shows that Bigfoot just had more dress sense. Up here they probably use Velcro or something.
Now, I think now the president of the Australian Skeptics is living up here. Somehow, I think there should be some fresh Yowie tracks before long.
I think that's definitely the case. I can see it happening. By the way, this is also a hotbed of psychics.
Psychics up here?
Many psychics up here. And also people doing all sorts of strange and paranormal things.
Lots to investigate.
Oh, there's a lot to investigate. I mean, I may join the local psychic society just simply to feel part of the community.
I'm sure they'd welcome you with open minds.
Up here there are many strange people. Most of the towns here have at least one shop that sells crystals.
Good.
And other woo-woo things.
Yeah.
So I feel quite at home here.
All right. Now, listeners, be rest assured we shall endeavour to come back here in the middle of the year, probably when it's nice and cool and crisp, and spot UFOs.
Well, the UFOs will love to come here because it snows here in the middle of the year.
It does, yeah.
And that means that they can land in the middle of the night, and by morning there's snow all over the top of them in the middle of the local park. and people don't actually notice the spaceship sitting there.
This sounds like a conspiracy theory to
They
me.
do notice the three-toed footprints leaving and coming back, but we can explain that.
And from Wentworth Falls in the beautiful Blue Mountains, thank you, Peter Bowditch.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this UFO special of the Skeptic Zone. Next week, show 13. Ooh, show 13. It's a regular show with Stefan, Dr. Rachael reports, the think tank, and all the features you like. And if you visit www.skepticzone.tv, under each episode you can click the link to the comments and comment on the shows and let us know what you think. And don't forget, you're free to email us with your suggestions and greetings anytime. Until next week, this is Richard Saunders from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.